Okay, welcome everybody. We'll get started in just a couple minutes as people are joining. And Beth, are you going to be sharing your screen? Okay, perfect.
Yes, I'm going to share mine.
All right, I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes. All right, everybody was early. That was good. Okay. While we're waiting for, I always love to find out just who's here. And so while we're waiting, if you can just put who you are in the chat, what school or district you're associated with, your role, that would be great. And then we just have an idea of who's in the room with us. Often the wisdom is in the room. So would love to hear who's here. I will go ahead. And it's 3 o'clock right now, so I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Alexa Pearson. I'm the Director of Standards and Instructional Support at ODE, and Beth is a member of my team. And so she leads for counseling and career. She does a lot of things for the agency, wears a lot of different hats. And so we're here today to talk about some of the guidance that recently was put out. And so around school counseling programs. So we'll give a couple more minutes for people to put their name in the chat, and as people are showing up, because it is just 3 o'clock, I usually get to every meeting about 5 minutes late, even in the Zoom world. I used to say when I was at ODE, it was because I was running from floor to floor, but that still happens even when I'm just standing straight at a desk and not going anywhere. I still manage to be 5 minutes late for every meeting. So it's miraculous, but it still happens. Oh, I see Denise. Hi, Denise. And just to give, I worked in several other districts, so it's always fun for me to meet with people in the field, because I get to see a lot of people that I know or I've heard of. And so this is like the highlight of my day when I get to see everybody. And not talk about metrics. That's the other part. That's a highlight. All right. Right. Well, again, yeah, I see some people from Portland. We'll go ahead and get started. Beth, do you want to go ahead and share your screen? And do you want to say anything to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi everyone, Beth Wiggum here from Department of Education. We're just really excited that you're on. We weren't sure what the turnout was going to be, but we wanted to make sure we're available to answer any questions and make sure that the guidance is clear. And we know that there may be specific questions to your district or to your schools. And so we're excited to answer those questions today. And so we'll go through our PowerPoint and then the back end have time for the questions and answers, but we also want you to feel free to ask questions over in the chat that we'll be able to answer during that time, or maybe we might even be able to get to them throughout the presentation. And I'm not sure how Zoom works, but when I start to screen share, I don't know if I'll be able to see my notes or see you all, so I just wanted to let you know that we'll be talking, and Alexa, feel free to jump in if there's questions that maybe I don't see.
Great.
That's it for me.
All right, so she's going to get the presentation. I'll try to also track the chat here. But, and I really am excited to be here, because this to me, so I started at ODE, just a little storytelling. I started at ODE a year ago, a little over a year ago. And this House Bill 2876 was kind of my seriously, 2 weeks into the job we were engaging with partners around this topic. So for me, it's like seeing it kind of come full circle to like where it's going to be implemented is really exciting. It's also exciting for me from the perspective of having been a school principal and putting together a comprehensive school counseling plan and knowing all the different parts and kind of the flexibility that is needed sometimes to pull together a plan. So hopefully this will help, will feel like it's supportive of you designing a plan for your school. So I think we already introduced ourselves, so we'll go on. So what we're going to do today is we'll do a little bit of an overview of HB 2876, and then the OER, the rules that we wrote with that. And then Beth's going to talk a lot about kind of there's three parts of it, and she'll talk about the team approach. And then we'll give you some examples, talk through some ideas, and then really it's question and answers. People can, again, I also always do say the wisdom's in the room. So if you have things that you've tried in your district or that you've learned, please put those ideas into the chat and we can learn together. All right, so just the broad like top overview, just in case people are like, okay, what is this? Somebody said I had to be here and I'm here, you know, who knows, but this is, I get all my HBs mixed up. We have a lot of them on my team. So HB 2876 is basically defined who can deliver the comprehensive school counseling program. Previously, it was TSPC school counselors. This bill opened that up to add the TSPC licensed school social workers, and like the other option is a team approach. And that team approach, we worked with stakeholders throughout the state on this. We met with folks. We also worked with our State Board of Education to talk about what is that role of, what would need to be on the team? What pieces need to be on the team? And the image I showed on the last slide is a picture of like a puzzle, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, how do I pick a picture here? I was like looking for all these images. And really what I appreciate about this, and we'll talk about this throughout the presentation, is that this allows some flex, like your puzzle, like if you're an administrator or you're a counselor, or you're just anywhere in schools, whatever you're working in schools, you're putting together this puzzle for kids, and there's a lot of different pieces to provide support for them. So we're going to talk about that. There are some pieces of the puzzle, and I think that's on you can now skip forward on that slide, where you know, through this adoption process, there were some strong feelings around what needed to fit. And what we landed on is that we really wanted to provide flexibility to folks, that they can have some opportunity to work on with their local context, like the needs of their actual school. So we had public comments, again, State Board of Education, broad stakeholder group. And I did hear, just someone put in here, can we have access to this PowerPoint? Absolutely. We'll totally share this with you and any other resources that you may need. So with this team approach, if you keep going, Beth. And I think this might be your slide, Beth, but I want to talk about something in there, because even if the puzzle, when we talk about this team approach, there are specific things, there are specific pieces you need in this puzzle. So, you know, when you design, I mean, I'm just thinking again from my context, I actually was a principal of a K-12 school. So it was a little complicated figuring out how we were going to do comprehensive school counseling plan, knowing that like the needs of a 12th grader around graduation are very different than the needs of a kindergartner. So for me, building that plan and what it looked like, was really, I had to think about all the different pieces that would go into us executing this plan. And if you can see here, these are the ones that we landed on. Again, this wasn't, when I say we, I mean that with like a whole big we that was with the stakeholder feedback and with State Board of Education. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth to talk about more of the details. And then I'll be here to monitor the chat, and I'll be answering the chat as she's going through the rest of the slides.
Yeah, thank you, Alexa. So I just wanted to quickly clarify a couple things that that maybe districts might know, maybe not, but there actually hadn't been any law or rule that says who implements comprehensive school counseling programs. It was just that they have to be implemented in schools. So districts were kind of left to figure out who might develop them, design them, implement them. So what happened is it's kind of left just some confusion out in districts and schools around who are the people that are designated to implement. So with the implementation of House Bill 2876, so when that law passed, it started to clearly tell us who can implement. So we know that school counselors, school social workers that are both licensed by TSPC can design, deliver, and implement a comprehensive school counseling program. So we know that. The part that was left for the State Board of Education in the law allowed some, like Alexa said, some flexibility to design what that looked like. So ODE worked with multiple stakeholders, OEA, OSBA, COSA, the school counseling program for the university, the school social work program for the university, also the state associations, and then also with the districts, whether it was superintendents, administrators. So all of us came together to really flesh out the language. Like Alexa said, you know, we really were trying to get the language right, but also provide that flexibility for what maybe already might be implemented in schools and districts across the state. Because we didn't want to have a situation where it put people that are already in positions implementing comprehensive school counseling programs in or put you in any kind of difficult situation. So we wanted to make sure that it was really clear and flexible. So what we came up with for the requirements for specifically for the team approach was that that it needed to be one or more of professionals that are licensed by TSPC, and that the members of the whole team have the professional training or experience in the following areas. So those 8 areas that are listed right here are what would make up the entire counseling team across your school. It could be across the district, but those are what we were saying are kind of the floor. Like there can be additional people that are a part of the school program with additional experience, expertise, but this was identified as essential for implementing comprehensive school counseling programs. So this has become kind of the floor that we wrote into language. And so we know that the school counselor, school social worker, the language says that a team of qualified professionals are also responsible for implementing the school counseling program. So rather than listing the professionals, we thought we would list the types of training and experience. So that's where this language has landed with the rules. So when we began to think about what does this mean, why would a district need to use, or why would they use a team approach? We want you to share your thoughts in the chat. I'm sorry, I won't be able to see them. Alexa can maybe list some of them, but what are some reasons why a district would want to use a team approach? So maybe you might be using a team approach that you could list why.
Yeah, see, everybody just thought they were going to come at 3 o'clock and just listen, but we are actually going to activate your brains a little bit. And just so you know, Beth, there's a request in the chat, and I think this is great, around some sample plans that we could produce and share some sample plans as we collect them from districts to show. So really appreciate that. I hear collaboration, shared expertise allows us to see the whole picture of the school. Team approach allows for different lenses on the child and his or her needs, etc. Collaboration, I'm seeing a lot of that. Allows us to see the whole picture of the school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a ton of work to do to make it comprehensive, absolutely. Better buy-in. Depending on the size of the school, there may be limited qualified school counselors and social workers, but others with expertise. I would say that was a thing we heard throughout this process. People said, like, we do not have access to school counselors at this, and so trying to figure out how we, it would be like very, very small districts where people wear multiple roles. I can see Beth here too. Beth has her babes at home, so I can see she's doing that, as many of you are, caring for children and trying to do your job too. Multiple perspectives to solve a problem. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, all of the above. So in the district guidance, we wanted to make sure that we identified that the Comprehensive School Counseling Program, the team should reflect the commitment to providing equitable, culturally responsive supports and services for all students. And we know, so we all know that's on this conference call and across the state, that what that looks like is so different from district to district, school to school, even within a district. It could be very different, the needs of the school. And so what we wanted to make sure, again, was that we were very intentional with providing that flexibility. And I know we keep coming back to that, but we wanted to make sure that that was addressed. So what we did with the OAR language was that we wanted to make sure that the language allowed for the district or at the school level to develop the team approach that works best for you and for the school's needs, while still meeting the requirements for the new law and for the updated OAR. So the language in there, in the guidance, helps to implement the law. And so we were really working at that. And we also know that in some of the rural or smaller districts, that there may be some times where services have to be contracted out, or people are just having difficulty finding people for positions. I think Alexa just mentioned that was one that was dropped into the chat, was that what we were hearing is, hey, I'm in a rural area. I spent the last couple of years trying to find a school counselor, a school social worker, but I just haven't been able to find them. And so this language in the OAR provides that flexibility. So just wanted to give an example that a district, so we're doing Division 22 assurances. If you're familiar with that, it's the OARs and whether districts are in compliance with them or not. And what a district identified, hey, I'm not sure if I'm in compliance. They marked themselves out of compliance. And what we did is we had a discussion with the district, like, what's your setup? How is this working? How are you implementing this? And so what we learned was that because they were having difficulty finding someone in this rural small district, what they did was they decided that the school would be kind of responsible for the social learning, the day-to-day interactions with the students, and that would be distributed through the staff that are in the building. But when it became a tier 2, tier 3, if you're familiar with tiered systems, when the students were needing more services, families needed more help that maybe the school couldn't provide because they didn't have the staff, then they needed to look at who can they partner with in either their district or their region to help provide those services that a comprehensive school counseling program would. So we know in a larger district that those services can be provided through a team, through a multidisciplinary team in the school or in the district. But sometimes in rural areas, you have to look outside of that. So maybe it might be at ESD or county community mental health or support. So they said that's how they were addressing some of the mental health pieces, was through an extension of the program that made sure students were kind of getting all of the services that they need that the school didn't have the personnel to provide. So they worked with their community mental health to provide that. So when I asked, well, how is your college and career being done? Because that's also part of a comprehensive school counseling program. So we know socio-emotional learning, we've got the mental health covered, but how is these other pieces like the college and career being addressed, and academic? So they said, well, we have the academic covered within the school. College and career is being embedded into our classrooms. So we have our educators talking about careers. We put on these events, and that's created in collaboration across the whole school or the whole district if it was a district event. And so that's how they were implementing their comprehensive school counseling program. So after hearing that, we said, yes, it sounds like you are meeting all the things that you need in order to implement a comprehensive school counseling program. So it wasn't a concern. They were no longer a concern on our list that we needed to help support them. They were making it work. So I wanted to mention that because we know that it's going to look very, very different. And Alexa, did you want to add any additional pieces?
There's a good question in the chat, and so I'm going to bring that up. It says, is the goal for every school social worker to be a part of delivering a comprehensive school counseling plan? If not, when should they be doing so? And when would their work be seen as separate?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So a part of identifying a team approach or any school counseling program should be implemented in collaboration. But when you don't have the personnel to do that work, or if you are implementing it through a collaboration, what you should do is look at who are the personnel, who are the different professionals, their expertise. We're not asking you to go through every single professional in your building or in your district and identify what are their expertise or experience. But what we are asking you to do is identify who is helping to implement a comprehensive school counseling program. And so when you identify, you're able to, whether this is part of HR process and you have their position description, you're able to identify what is their role under the umbrella of a comprehensive school counseling program. So to get to the question, yes, a social worker should be a part of a comprehensive school counseling program, whether that's at a district level or a school level. Sometimes district level, they're coming into schools, in and out of schools. Sometimes they're housed at a school and they're helping to support comprehensive school counseling programs, but that maybe they might be addressing more of the behavioral pieces and working with administrators doing discipline. School social workers might even be running small groups. So they're an extension they're part of the program, but they are serving a very different role than the school counselors might under that. And then versus what maybe even a school psychologist would, that's supporting, a school for services and supports for students. So each person under the umbrella of a comprehensive school counseling program has their role, and it's very clear, and it should be very clear. Where we kind of get into some gray area is where there is definitely some overlap between the different positions. So individually supporting students, running groups, doing interventions, those are all similar types of services that happen. But the topics that are covered are going to be from the professionals with the expertise to address those topics. So that's why we refer back to what TSPC has outlined for the scope and the roles of school counselors, school social workers, others who may be school psychologists who are implementing comprehensive school counseling programs. We refer back to what is their expertise. And then we ask you to then figure out where maybe there might be some gaps in those programs and where you might need to fill in those gaps. So looking at who in your schools and your districts would be doing that work. Does that answer the question? Sorry, long response.
Yeah, I think as you're figuring this out too, the more clear you can, depending on what you have, like I know for just things that will come up when you're doing a team approach, as you know, as people, sometimes it works out really well and people are like, okay, this is great. The whole point is that you're supporting, the child, and as much, it's not like, oh, I don't think anyone's like, I have too much support. So I do think when you're looking at a school, but there are some places where I know when I was doing this, there were some places where like, that's really my expertise, or that's really my expertise. So being really clear on, how do you support a team to be able to talk about where do we, of course people want to do everything, and like where are they best suited to do some of the pieces that like really in their expertise that they do really well. So I think that will take some navigating. I don't want to like skip over that part, but when building a team, I'm guessing you will also have those things come up.
I think just a couple quick updates that we can tell you too is that we're working with, so in the House bill passed, what it created was a chain of events that needed to happen because the law came before other things were in place. So the law said that these professionals would implement comprehensive school counseling program. Great. What we needed to address was that, do these professionals have training in how to design, deliver, and implement comprehensive school counseling programs? Not everyone is trained in this. It's typically very specific for school counselors. But because of the way that the law has changed who design, delivers, implement, I keep using that because that's the language of the law, design, deliver, implement, we now need to work with the university programs to make sure that they're adding in components of how to do this. you are hiring people that are in charge of implementing this. You want to make sure that they know how to implement, to improve, how to be able to pull all the pieces together. And so you need people that are trained in that. And so we're working with the university programs. We're also working with TSPC to help define the scope. So what we mentioned in guidance is that this next school year, they're going through a redesign for school social workers and for school counselors. So we'll be working closely with them to make sure that those pieces are in there and it's updated to match the law. And so then that way, then the programmatic pieces from the university are also making sure they're getting what their needs are. What we'll need to address, and Alexa, I hope if I could be transparent, what we'll need to address is gaps where people are already in schools working and they maybe not have this lens of how to implement comprehensive school counseling programs. So we'll have to figure out a way to get them trained and work with you to get people trained on how to implement if they're the ones that are designated as the lead for comprehensive school counseling programs. So the law says, yes, school counselors, school social workers, and this team approach, but you want to make sure that you're hiring staff that can do this work. And so there's some things that are coming that will help, but we also are at the state level looking at where are there gaps and how can we help fill these gaps to make sure that people are ethically and professionally trained to do this work. Also, what was clear from State Board and from public comments is that we want to provide comprehensive school counseling programs that are culturally responsive. How do we bring in people that look like our students, talk like our students, backgrounds like our students? How do we bring in more professionals? So kind of like this pipeline for providing educators in schools and districts that can work with students and their families. And so what we wanted to do was through the language also provide that flexibility that can happen through that team approach. And Alexa was asking, she said earlier, maybe if I could provide an example. So a way that that maybe you have done or that I've seen is that the school counseling program will work with others within a district or within a school who can provide school events, college and career, or parent events that are in the language of the students. And so they'll help in coordination with those activities that are under the umbrella of a comprehensive school counseling program. But the speakers, the presenters, the staff that are helping to direct during that time have all been working in collaboration to provide those supports and services and the events. So that can work in that way and provide that flexibility as well. Anything else?
Well, Beth, why don't I do this? I think there's only one more slide, right, that has our contact information on it. Is that true?
Yeah.
Why don't you put that up for a minute, just so people can grab those, and I can also put that in the chat. We have two questions that I want to make sure we get to, and then yes, I'll do those two questions first, and then people can put this. Well, like I said, we'll also put this in the chat, but feel free to grab this. We'll also send you the PowerPoint so you have all these things. The one thing I was going to see, I think if you could put in the chat, because I just want to make sure people have the guidance document. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just because all of a sudden I was like looking through all my stuff. I have no idea where that lives. It lives somewhere.
I'm going to stop screen sharing real quick and I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, great. And I'll make sure our contact information is in here as well. So as you're looking for that, I'm just going to cue you up. I think you maybe started to answer this question, but is there a reference somewhere where you can see the coursework that the various specialties take in comparison to each other, just to help know what strengths each professional brings? And I think that would be within the scope of the license. And that is what we're working on with TSPC too, to try to identify what courses would need to be part of their program. Is that true? Or you can talk more on this.
Sorry, say the question again.
Is there a reference somewhere where you can see the coursework for the various roles, specialties take in comparison to each other, just to help know what strength each professional brings?
Yeah, there is through TSPC. They have a list of what so they call them the professional competencies, and those are by what the programs deliver. What are they providing for students? What are the skills, competencies, professional expertise that they're building. And so it shows, you know, it outlines what they do within the programs, what courses they take. It also talks about, in that guidance from TSPC, how many hours of, if you know this already, if you don't, school counselors have to do student teaching. So there's a component for school counselors. And so there's additional requirements for school counseling versus where school social workers don't have student teaching experience. And so it just serves in a little bit different role. And then the number of hours for internships is a little bit different between both. So it delineates what's the difference, what's the expertise and the training for those. And so I believe that might be already provided in the guidance, the hyperlinks to TSP's website, TSPC's website. It should be in there. And then I'm just trying to find, Alexa, the guidance is not posted on ODE's website, but it was in our email. So I think I can send that. I'll need to find it in the email that went out.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure people had access to that as we're talking about it, because that was one of the, so some of the other things coming in, just questions, discussion with state universities to offer programs for current educators or new to the profession wanting to become school counselors. We need more OSU, University of Oregon satellite programs maybe.
Agreed, yes. Yeah, I know, so I know OSU, Oregon State University, I know that they're working on a Canvas course on comprehensive school counseling programs. And what my interest is making sure that that is available statewide, and so that people in different professions can take that. That had been a goal of mine originally, was to develop how to implement and continuously improve a comprehensive school counseling program. And I have not been able to develop a course around that, but I have provided regional professional learning through ESDs on how to do that. And I've worked with them. I noticed somebody here on the call that had been a part of that. And so that is something that we provide for regions. And we also work with districts to help with assessing their programs and doing some improvement. But agreed, yeah, it needs to be a satellite, more satellites.
I'm muted. I'm just talking away here. James pitched something in the chat here too that I think is, and I think this is one thing to name. And again, you know, also, like I said, looking at the wisdom in the room here for, you know, no one's debating the positive intent of the coordinated delivery of comprehensive counseling programs across disciplines, but it does have the potential to create discord and confusion among school-based teams. So it sounds like PPS has created some initial guidance to get ahead of it, but would love to see some thinking from ODE or other districts to address this challenge. So two things I just want to say is that one of the purposes of these Q&As is one, to learn from you of what we need to do at ODE to help you best support you in implementing this. So we're taking these ideas, we'll save the chat and we will be bringing this back. So I'm already hearing some pieces in here, but I do wonder if other people have, or Beth, if you want to take a stab at that, or if other people have ideas of how they are going about, how do we lessen that, that opportunity, I guess, to create discord and confusion with the school-based teams. And then a follow-up with that is there anything in the legislation that would prevent a school district from further limiting who they would like to employ to deliver a comprehensive school counseling program if they choose to do so? So I'm guessing, Nicole, what you're saying, so I just want to make sure I understand it right, is if I was a school and I said, we only want our school counselors to develop a comprehensive school counseling plan, and that's our district policy. Is that what is that the question? Nicole, you can unmute.
Yeah, or only school counselors and social workers, or right, only school counselors. So, you know, in our district, we have social workers who are employed in many of our schools, but they're seen as separate from, and we haven't, you know, in PPS, certainly we do have challenges sometimes, but not the same challenges that other districts have in hiring. So I'm just wondering if in the legislation, is there anything that would prevent a school district from making their own policy about who they would choose to employ to deliver comprehensive school counseling programs, or with their funding for school counselors as it is generally earmarked.
Yeah, that's a great question. Alexa, are you okay if I answer, help you answer? So
Yeah.
the second part, Nicole, of your question, thank you. So it's a hiring decision. So you advertise, so for your districts, for your schools, you advertise who you want to hire, but the catch is that you cannot hire a school social worker to fill an advertisement to fill the role of a school counselor. So if you advertise as a school counselor, that's the position you're filling, you cannot fill that position with anybody else. That's very specific. So when you do your hiring, when you do your advertising, you could leave open the type of you don't necessarily have to put a role, or you could put multiple roles, but you put kind of what the duties are that you'd want the person to kind of do. But if you want it to be clear that there's these other types of roles that could go for this position, then you just advertise it a little more open. So school counselor, school social worker, or someone with these skills, knowledge, expertise, and then you list that within your posting. So you just want to be careful that because this is in rule, and a person can't work out of their scope or within the scope of another. And that also means that you wouldn't be able to advertise. I think that's also in TSPC's rules, that for the licensing, you can't have license types filling other positions, other roles, unless it's specified within the TSPC rules. And then Nicole, were you going to add something?
No, thank you. That answers my question.
Nicole also, so there was another question in the chat, and Nicole could probably even speak to this. So Portland Public, North Clackamas School District are two districts that are working with Hatching Results. Hatching Results is a company that comes in and looks at multi-tiered, multi-domain systems of support. That might have got the acronym mixed up a little bit, MDMTSS. And basically, so comprehensive school counseling programs have the academic developmental domain, the college and career, and then we have the socio-emotional for school counseling. So across all of those, Oregon's very specific. We also have community involvement developmental domain, and across all of those, there's different ways that you would implement the program at different tiers. And so these two districts are working with Hatching Results to make it really clear of what the lanes are of the different professionals under that umbrella who are implementing comprehensive school counseling programs. So I think that and maybe Nicole can speak to that, how it is really helping make clear of who's doing what. And that also is an opportunity to approve upon position descriptions within schools and districts, and delineate coordination of services and wraparound support for students. Nicole, did you want to speak to anything that you guys are doing in Portland Public?
Well, we're in our second year of working with Hatching Results, although our first year got cut short a bit due to COVID. But I mean, they're really amazing. They have a large number of really highly talented trainers and professionals. So they do training for our staff, and they also, part of our contract is consultation time to work with our department as well as senior leadership, which I think is really important and something that we've yet to really fully tap into. But I think what this legislation is speaking to, which we've always felt, is the need for district leaders and building administrators to really have solid training and understanding of what a comprehensive school counseling program is, because without that, this plan is hard to implement successfully if the people doing the hiring don't have that understanding of what a comprehensive school counseling program is. So we're working on that with them, and they're just an amazing resource in a number of ways. So I'm happy to speak to anybody if they want to talk about, more about what their work has been like. We're also doing a lot of work with them around understanding comprehensive school counseling with a racial equity lens, which has been great.
Thank you. I see Michael Rawls is on. Michael, did you want to add what North Clackamas School District? I think you guys are a year ahead of Portland Public.
Yeah, no, I just would reiterate anything. They've been a fantastic organization to come in and give us a framework, and the MTMDSS has been really helpful to help us understand through a counseling lens what MTSS looks like K-12. And I think we had kind of a handle on it K-5, but not so much beyond that. And so in the counseling department, it's kind of put them ahead of the curve of understanding that for the rest of our staff in our buildings, which has been kind of nice to position counselors as kind of the knowledge leaders for that at least. And they also have I was interested in doing it this year, but I can't pull it off with COVID. So maybe next year, but they have a whole training on, it's called Stay in Your Lane. And it's basically helping school districts understand the roles of school counselors, school social workers, and school psychologists. And my hope is that I can get all three of those groups in the room at once through next year, if we're back in person, and have that training, because I think that would be helpful for everyone. It certainly would be helpful for our school psychs as well, and for everyone that's not a school psych to understand how we can work together and where those barriers or the roles differ.
Thank you for adding. School psychs, so there's a district in Oregon who uses school psychs to implement comprehensive school counseling programs, and it's really difficult to get, from what I understand, get school counselors, school social workers into these positions, because they're really, this district is really needing school psychs to do some of those pieces. So what we asked that particular district is, where are the gaps in your comprehensive school counseling programs, because school psychs serve a very specific role. So how are those other pieces being met? So how is college and career readiness components being met? How are other coordination pieces for that school and the district being met? So that is what we look for, that those pieces are being filled in some way or another.
So Beth, I have to jump off, but I put my contact information, everybody. That's my cell phone number. Feel free to reach me, reach out if you need anything. Beth's going to continue here. We do have to end. We have like one shared Zoom account for our team. You can imagine I have like a team of like 17 people. It's in very high demand. So I know we have to end a little bit early at 3:55 or so, but please do reach out. I'll let Beth continue. Beth, you're in charge of the chat.
Sure.
And thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. So one other resource I wanted to mention that was within actually there's a couple other resources within the guidance. So one is what Michael mentioned was Stay in Your Lane. So what we've done, ODE has worked with the Oregon School Counselor Association, the Oregon School Social Work Association, and the university programs for those two professions. And what we've done is developed a tiered approach based on those developmental domains that I mentioned earlier. And actually, I don't think it was broken in developmental domains, but what we've done is we've worked with them to develop a tiered approach to those different professions. So what is it those professions provide at different tiers, different levels of support for students and families? And so that document is within the guidance, the link I shared in the chat. And there's another resource in there that within the guidance that helps you look at your programs, the competencies. So we call them again professional competencies, or what are those expertise that people have, and then what are some additional training that maybe some of the staff might need to get. And what we can do is help you, if staff need additional training, we can help direct to where that can happen if there's questions around that. So that is most of the presentation. Do you have additional questions that I can help answer? You have me all to yourself now. So there's a lot of great comments I see over in the chat. I think I could mention that there was a concern around child development specialists. So some of the districts around the state want a position, they need the position filled for implementing comprehensive school counseling programs, but maybe they're having difficulty finding the people to do that work. So sometimes districts will create a child development specialist plan where people from other backgrounds, expertise can help implement a comprehensive school counseling program. So the child development specialist is authorization that we offer at ODE. I was trying to kind of move away from that because they fall under the umbrella of this law and the OAR. So you could just hire someone to do this work as long as they have the expertise and professional training. But we also wanted to make sure that it was clear, again, in the guidance of who is trained, and then find ways that we can help get professionals those additional training if they don't have it. So child development specialists are a position that districts use to help implement comprehensive school counseling programs. So that was one of the questions that keep coming up, is does that mean they can't do this work anymore? No, they fall under the umbrella. It was just districts identifying where are the gaps and how do we help fill those. So there was a question, somebody was interested in if there's a recording. We have recorded it. I think, and I'm not sure if Alexa mentioned that in the beginning, but we'll be able to send that out to you and have your questions answered, or those who couldn't participate today. They can, or you could review it as well. So another is, how will those attending the session get the samples that were discussed? So we're going to share the PowerPoint. So I'll send the recording and the PowerPoint, and then I will resend the district guidance that we provided. And within that district guidance is some of those resources that you could use. So we'll make sure you have that. And again, we're just really appreciative that you all could jump on. We know how busy you are and stretched thin and just crazy times. And so we're just so thankful for you to be on today so we could share. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if there are not any other questions, you had our contact information. Please reach out to either Alexa or myself, and we'll make sure that your questions are answered. If you need additional support, we're happy to do that as well. So if there's no other questions, then we can end our time a little bit early. Thank you. Thank you all. Jill, are you still on? Looks like there was a question.
I am still on.
Oh, Jill, hi. So the Stay in Your Lanes is with the Hatching Results, and that is one of their resources. That's one of the trainings that they do with districts. I think they might have some resources on their website that I can send you. Do you want to put your email? I think I might have your email already, don't I? Put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat real quick.
And I'll send you the link to their website. Actually, I might be able to find Hatching Results real quick.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was them or not, and I know they provide consultation services, so not everything may be available to the general public.
Yes, some stuff that they provide for free, and then there's the other pieces that you have to pay for as part of their consultation.
Right.
I'm trying to see if the resource. I will look to see what they have, and I will send you something. I'm not seeing it really quick off on their website.
Thanks. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Thank you.
What's that?
I said thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that.
Oh, no, you're fine. So
Thank you for the opportunity.
That's just great. Yes, thank you. So I will email you back. I'll respond with where to find that information. Thank you. Thanks so much.